My father said I was a murderer, because I stubbornly refused to let them have a second child. My sister was aborted. Later, when my brother was born, I devoted almost my entire life to him out of guilt for my sister. Only upon my death did I realize that my parents had aborted my sister simply because she was a girl. It had nothing to do with my wishes. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the age of 5. Once more, I heard my father say to me, "Your mother is going to give you a little sister. She doesn't want you anymore. Your mother is going to give you a little sister. She doesn't want you anymore." My unusually young father spoke these cruel words with a beaming smile, trying to make me cry, but I was only stunned for a moment before I happily spoke up. "Great, I'm going to have a little sister." He was quite dissatisfied with my reaction and wanted to say something more. I had already rushed out of the courtyard to share this joy with the neighbors basking in the sun outside. Grandpa James grinned, showing his yellow teeth, and said, "With a little sister, your mom won't want you anymore." Aunt Wu chimed in, "From now on, you'll have to share all the good food and fun toys with your sister." I tilted my head back, put my hands on my hips, and declared, "I'll give everything to my sister. I love my sister." Everyone burst into laughter. "You're still young and don't understand anything." I laughed along with them. I had actually been reborn. After working myself to death to support my parasitic younger brother, I had returned to 40 years ago. In my previous life, it was on this very day that my father told me about my mother being pregnant with a second child. At that time, I was only 5 years old and had no real concept of what it meant to have another family member, but my father told me that if I had a little sister, my mother wouldn't want me anymore. From then on, all the delicious food and fun things would no longer be for me. They would all go to my sister. He made me cry, and I ran out of the yard. The neighbors asked me what was wrong, and I told them with grievance, only to receive a gleeful confirmation. No one knew how terrified I was at that time. When my mother returned, I threw myself into her arms and hysterically said I didn't want a sister. A few days later, my mother, looking pale and weak, told me that since I disliked my little sister so much, she had decided to have an abortion. Before I could even feel happy about it, my father called me a murderer. He said it was all because of me that my sister was aborted, that I had killed her. Although a 5-year-old's mind is not yet mature, it possesses an almost stubborn sense of justice. I still vividly remember my physical reaction after being labeled a murderer by my father. My mind went blank, my limbs went numb, and I felt trapped in an invisible net, so tight that I couldn't breathe. I was both terrified and miserable, wanting to cry, but I was so frightened that I couldn't even manage to shed a tear. My mother, unaware of my distress, chimed in from the side, "Sarah, from now on, you are a murderer." Whenever I wanted something in the future, they would say, "A murderer has no right to make so many demands." If I didn't listen, they would threaten to call the police and have the officers take me away as a murderer. I lived in constant fear that the police would come and shoot me. I would often wake up from nightmares, crying and screaming, but my father said it was because I had killed my sister, and her vengeful spirit was haunting me. I was in a daze, stumbling even on flat ground, and accidentally disfigured myself with a pencil I was holding, yet my father still wouldn't let me off, saying that killing my sister was a punishment from heaven. During that time, my mother became pregnant twice more, but both times she miscarried for no apparent reason. Around the 4th or 5th month, my father said it was because I had killed my sister, and no one dared to be reborn into our family. I suffered greatly until my brother was born, due to the ongoing psychological torment from a young age. Even after receiving a formal education from the state, I still deeply believed my father's words. Out of guilt towards my 3 younger sisters, I treated my only younger brother extremely well. When he was young, I took care of him wholeheartedly. When he grew up, I worked hard to earn money to buy him a car and a house. Because I was constantly frightened by my parents, I was in a daze all day long, and my grades were naturally very poor. After graduating from junior high school, I went to work in an unregulated factory, plus, with a disfigured face, I was looked down upon by everyone, making it harder to earn money than the average person, and life was very tough. By my 40s, I was already plagued by serious illnesses due to overwork. I didn't want to spend money, and I didn't want to burden my family either. After losing the ability to work, I returned to the old house in the countryside to wait for death. I wonder if my sister has been reincarnated yet. If not, would she still resent me if she saw me? Hearing me say this, Dad laughed and called me crazy. He said that because he and Mom were determined to have a son, the 3 sisters in between were all aborted, and it had nothing to do with me, so I could rest assured and die. The impact of these words on me was no less than when my father declared me a murderer. I really wanted to question him. If that was the case, Why did he call me a murderer? Why did he place all the blame on me? But by then, I was already very weak and couldn't even speak loudly. Only with deep resentment, unable to rest in peace. Perhaps it was precisely for this reason that I was reborn, returning to the wrong beginning. At 5 years old, my parents could use my innocence to conceal their hypocrisy. I can also use this identity to carry out my revenge. When Mom came home from work, she immediately told me that I was going to have a little sister. She just stared at me, expecting me to cry and make a scene, so that getting an abortion would seem justified. Unfortunately, she's going to be disappointed. I happily rushed to her and gently touched my mother's belly. Sister, I'm going to have a sister. Mom, I like having a sister. My mother frowned. What's so good about having a sister? They're full of schemes and will take your things. No need for her to take them, I said. I'll give everything to my sister. Despite my great expectations for my sister, my mother still had an abortion. Looking at her pale face, I asked knowingly, Mom, what's wrong? My mother sighed. I've been working too hard and couldn't keep the baby. In our small town, the preference for sons over daughters is severe. In 9 out of 10 cases, the reason for abortion is related to gender. For every illegal clinic that performs fetal gender identification and gets shut down, another one pops up soon after. Having a son is a mandatory goal that every family must achieve. Despite this, everyone remains silent about the real reasons for abortion. They will find all sorts of excuses to cover up the truth. In my previous life, I was their excuse, selfish and unwilling to accept my sister. In this life, my anticipation for my sister is known to all, and the excuse has become my mother's responsibility. It's all because you don't listen that Mom is so tired. My father is keen on pinning all the problems on me. Only in this way can a dutiful and obedient daughter be raised, willingly becoming the family's blood supply. Unfortunately, I am no longer the little girl who can be easily intimidated, so I tilted my head and said with a serious expression, It's not my fault. It was you who wanted a son, so you killed my sister. Who said that? My father's face darkened as he looked toward the yard, his gaze settling on the gossiping neighbors, but I pointed behind him and spoke softly, My sister told me. My parents instinctively looked in the direction I pointed, but aside from the half-open wardrobe, there was nothing. They glanced at each other, both looking a bit confused. They didn't realize that the sister I was talking about was the daughter they had aborted. They simply assumed that some child had told me something and was now hiding in our wardrobe. My father strode over and flung both doors open wide. What are you doing in my closet? His answer was a chaotic pile of clothes. My father's face instantly paled, his lips trembling, but he couldn't utter a single word. Whose child is this? My mother's view was blocked by my father. She walked over with a weary body, then froze completely. At that moment, the hairs standing on end manifested in an extremely vivid form on my mother. She let out a scream and ran out in panic. My father snapped out of his daze, clenched his fists, and forced himself to calm down. He gritted his teeth and asked me, Which sister are you talking about? Where is she? I stared at him and said word by word, The sister you aborted. Isn't she standing right beside you? At this point, my father couldn't hold on either. He let out a strange cry and ran out as well. I watched their disheveled state with a cold laugh in my heart. I immediately chased after them, shouting, Sister, sister, where are you going? Grandpa James asked me with a gossipy look. Sarah, what's wrong with your parents? Why are they in such a hurry? Aunt Wu's focus wasn't on that. Instead, she was very curious about what I had said. Sarah, what sister are you talking about? Aunt Wu is the most superstitious. My parents' reaction and my words gave her some idea of what might be going on. That's exactly how she was in my past life. My parents were just making things up to control me, but she took it seriously and spread it everywhere. I tell everyone that I deserve to be haunted because I killed my sister out of selfishness. The neighbors initially paid no mind to such talk, but after I was disfigured in an unbelievable way, her vivid descriptions made many people half believe that I was haunted by a vengeful spirit, and I was almost completely isolated by everyone. I stopped chasing after my parents and pointed at her feet, saying, That's the sister my mother killed. Isn't she right beside you? For a child to say such things is incredibly devastating. Before the words had even finished, the neighbors who loved to gather and chat scattered in panic, especially Aunt Wu, who leaped up from her spot and ran a good distance away. I had no intention of letting her off so easily and started running toward her. Sister, Aunt Wu, you took my sister away. Seeing this, Aunt Wu, who was already pale, rolled her eyes and fainted. A few hours later, by the time my parents returned, The entire neighborhood knew that our family was being haunted by my unborn sister, but the two of them were unaware that everyone knew. They pretended to be calm and brought a charlatan they had found to our house to exorcise the ghost, using the excuse that a relative was visiting. Everyone saw through it but didn't say it out loud, instinctively stepping away from my parents. My dad, being sensitive, vaguely sensed something was off. But he was too eager to drive away the ghost to ask any further questions. He just grabbed me by the collar and dragged me back home. "Tell me, where is the ghost?" As soon as we entered the door, my father eagerly pulled me over to the cabinet. "Ghost? There's no ghost here, only my little sister." My words once again threw my father into a panic. He abruptly let go of me and, in a few quick steps, hid behind the Taoist priest. "Taoist master, you see, she just said that." The Taoist master was probably used to children talking nonsense and didn't take it seriously. "It's fine, I'll prepare some talisman water for you. Whenever she says she sees a ghost, just give her a dose, a few times and she'll be fine." As he spoke, he showed the payment QR code, 888 yuan. My dad complained about the price while pulling out his phone. I sneered inwardly and called out a name, "Bob." The Taoist priest shuddered, looking at me in horror. How do you know my real name?" "Of course I know his name." Bob was an outsider who suddenly appeared half a year ago. After idling around for a while, he transformed into a charlatan. Not only did he swindle people everywhere, but he also preyed on everyone's desire for sons, encouraging many to give away or even abandon their newborn baby girls. Bob is not very famous yet. He has just found his way and started making some small money by compromising his conscience. In a few more years, he will become widely renowned under his self-packaging. More and more people are seeking him out, hoping to have children. He grows increasingly greedy. Fame and money are no longer enough for him, and he begins to deceive families who want children, persuading them to sacrifice their daughters. Almost 1 in 10 underage girls here, and even some young boys, have fallen victim to his cruelty. Later, a girl he had bullied grew up and bravely stepped forward to expose his crimes, leading to his arrest and punishment. It was only then that everyone realized the revered Taoist priest they had placed on a pedestal was actually a fugitive who had attempted murder. I stared at Bob and said word by word, "That person is not dead. You can go back with peace of mind." He involuntarily took a step back. "What did you say?" I deliberately lowered my voice and explained the reason for his conflict with others. Bob's face changed color repeatedly, and in the end, without saying a word, he rushed out the door in a panic. The group of neighbors who had gathered outside the door to eavesdrop awkwardly scattered like birds and beasts. I called out to them, "Quick, call the police. Bob is a fugitive." Everyone looked stunned, but only Aunt Wu, who firmly believed in such matters, responded and ran home to call the police. In less than half an hour, the police arrived in our neighborhood to investigate the situation. Bob was indeed a fugitive and had already been arrested. If before, people were only half convinced that I could see the so-called younger sister, now they were completely convinced. My parents, watching the chattering neighbors and the stern-faced police, remained in a state of confusion. When it was their turn to be questioned, they no longer dared to claim that Bob was their relative. Instead, they quickly told the truth to distance themselves. The police gave them a lecture and then asked how they knew Bob was a fugitive. My father pointed at me. "She said it." The police looked at me with confusion, and I lowered my head to play with a piece of paper. "Little one, can Uncle have a chat with you?" I looked up, pretending to be innocent. "Sure, officer uncle, if Mom and Dad are murderers, can you arrest them?" The police officer's expression instantly turned serious, and my father's face went pale as he hurriedly explained. All the neighbors were present, listening as he and my mother reluctantly admitted that, in their desire for a son, they had aborted my sister. I was also listening attentively nearby. After he finished speaking, I spoke up, "But you killed my sister. You'll never have a son in this lifetime." "Little one," the police officer said gently, "this doesn't count as murder. You can't call your parents murderers anymore." I nodded. "Yes, but they can't have a son anymore. My sister won't agree." "Uncle has already scolded your parents on behalf of your sister. Don't be too upset." Everyone watched the police car drive away, then gathered around me. Fear of the unknown was overcome by curiosity, and they started asking me about Bob, one after another. I told them about Bob's attempted murder back in his hometown. When they asked me how I knew, I glanced at the empty space beside me and smiled. My sister told me. Everyone fell silent, not uttering a word, and each returned to their own home. My parents' faces grew even paler, standing still with me in place. "The more afraid they are, the more at ease I feel. They should get a good taste of the fear from my past life. I deliberately put on a sinister smile. Mom, Dad, let's go home. Early the next morning, my dad took me out with dark circles under his eyes, but not to kindergarten. He and I took the bus for nearly an hour to get to my aunt's house. My aunt, like me in my previous life, took care of everything for her younger brother. I was haunted by an evil spirit, and my parents were too scared to keep me, so they threw me to her. My father didn't even need to explain the reason. He just asked my aunt to take care of me for a while, and she agreed without hesitation. The disfigured uncle stood silently behind my aunt, offering a snow cake with his chicken claw-like hand in a gesture of goodwill. Without hesitation, I took it and smiled at him, saying, "Thank you, uncle." His eyes instantly welled up with tears. It had probably been a long time since a child had smiled at him. He was once a brilliant and spirited top student, but just a year after graduation, he suffered a severe fire accident. The facial features were melted by the fire, the hands were deformed, and I almost didn't make it through. For the sake of my father's job, my aunt willingly married him under my grandmother's arrangement. The only fortunate thing is that my uncle, who was also forced into the marriage, knew he had wronged my aunt and treated her extremely well. It's just a pity that in my previous life, around the end of this year, they were in a car accident and both passed away. I knew I would be sent to my aunt's place. My father, just like my brother, would turn to his sister whenever he couldn't solve a problem. My ultimate goal in pretending to be possessed wasn't to get back at my parents. It was to make him leave me with my aunt. I was only 5 years old and didn't want to waste my precious time seeking revenge on trash, but if I wanted to live well, I had to rely on my aunt for now. When my father left, he didn't forget to take a lot of things from my aunt's house. My aunt even gave him 500 yuan, telling him to use it to help my mother recover and try to conceive a son as soon as possible. I just watched coldly as my dad took the money for granted, then waved at him as he left. "Goodbye, little sister." My dad stumbled, almost dropping what he was holding. My aunt was efficient and transferred me to a new kindergarten in the afternoon, taking me to register at the one near her home. She said, "Sarah, your father had no choice but to send you to your aunt's house. Please don't blame him." I obediently nodded. In her, I saw the shadow of my past self, so I wouldn't show my resentment toward my father in front of her, or she would blame herself. It was a rare period of peaceful and harmonious time. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before my dad came to pick me up. Counting the time, it was when my mom was pregnant with my second younger sister. Perhaps they were still in what I call the fear of being entangled by my sister, but having a son was more important than anything else, so I had to go back to take care of my mom. From the time I can remember, I had endless household chores to do every day. By the time I was still too young to start elementary school, I could already stand on a stool to roll out dough. My mother was pregnant, and it was a rare chance for her to avoid housework. Her intention was probably to make my father do it. Unfortunately, my father would never serve anyone, so he brought me back to take care of things. Aunt and uncle were very reluctant to part with me. Uncle was unable to have children, and he longed for one. I heard him tell my aunt that he wanted to transfer my household registration to his name and adopt me with her. But my aunt knew that I would eventually be taken back, so she didn't agree. When my dad came to pick me up, my uncle stuffed a lot of money into his hands, telling him to take good care of me. Before my dad could accept it with a laugh, I snatched it away and shoved it back into my uncle's arms. "My sister won't allow them to have a son. I'll be back sooner or later." My dad, thinking it was bad luck, quickly covered my mouth and hurried away, back home. My mom was waiting for me to make her favorite hand-pulled noodles. I didn't resist. At 5 years old, I could cook, but my knife skills were still clumsy, so the presentation wasn't great. Yet, in just 2 months, my cooking skills improved dramatically, and even the plating became exquisite. "Eat up," I said. "This is your last meal together." My dad instinctively wanted to slap me, but held back out of fear. "What nonsense are you talking?" I said seriously. "It wasn't me who said it. It was my sister." They looked at each other, fear evident in their eyes. I pointed at my mother's belly. "My sister has gone into mom's belly now." My mother looked down at her still flat stomach and abruptly stood up. She blustered with a fierce but hollow threat. "If you keep talking nonsense, I'll beat you to death." I didn't take it seriously. "Even if you beat me, the baby in my belly is still a girl, but she doesn't want to be your child, so she's going to take you down with her." My ability to talk nonsense was learned from my dad. He liked to scare me even more when I was already afraid and terrified, and my mom would fan the flames from the side, pushing me deeper into the abyss. Now I'm giving it all back to them. letting them feel it for themselves. In the evening, I returned to the small room that had been converted from a storage space, happily soaking in the anxious and fearful atmosphere at home. My parents didn't seem to know what they were doing either, and it wasn't until late at night that they finally went back to their bedroom. I waited for a while before running over to knock on the door. Mom, Dad, open the door. My sister says she's uncomfortable in Mom's belly. My father angrily pulled open the door and, seeing the kitchen knife in my hand, let out a startled cry. What are you doing? My sister wants to come out. After my mother saw what I was holding, she also screamed in panic and hurriedly dialed 110. So, you're saying she wanted to kill you? It was the same officer as before, rubbing his temples with a weary expression. Yes, at the time she was holding a kitchen knife. The officer interrupted him. It's normal for children to play with dangerous things without understanding the risks. Abnormal, my mother, terrified that I would disembowel her, screamed hoarsely. She wants to kill me, won't kill Mom. The police officer glanced at me, then looked at my parents who were acting like lunatics. Anyway, this is just a verbal warning. If you make a false report again, we won't let it slide so easily next time. They both went to see the police off, while I returned to the kitchen, took out the whetstone, and started sharpening the knife. In the dead of night, the sound of the whetstone grinding against the kitchen knife echoed through the room, incredibly pleasing to the ear. My father and mother lingered by the kitchen door for a long time, but in the end, they chose to return to the bedroom, lock the door, and pretend they couldn't hear or see anything. Before long, my aunt and uncle knocked on my door. I don't know what they were talking about, but my dad and mom sounded extremely agitated. Not long after, my aunt opened my small room. She probably heard about my possession and stood at the door for a long time. Then he walked over, took the kitchen knife from my hand, and gently picked me up. I pretended to have just woken up and opened my eyes. Auntie, what brings you here? Aunt's eyes held a trace of fear, yet her voice remained gentle as she spoke. Sarah, how about Auntie takes you back to Auntie's house? I nodded and said yes, then shook my head. But I can't bear to part with my sister. I felt my aunt's body stiffen, her hands holding me trembling slightly, but for the sake of her brother, my father, she couldn't back down. I could only force a smile. How about taking my sister with us too? Not good. My sister says she wants to go with Mom and Dad. My mom broke down and screamed, take her away, now. My dad also shouted at my aunt, why are you saying so much nonsense? Just take her away quickly. My uncle noticed my aunt's fear and stepped forward, reaching out to take me over. My aunt gave me a complicated look and didn't let go. As they passed by my parents, my dad said to her, find time to complete the adoption paperwork. I was somewhat surprised, knowing my parents as I did, both lazy and fond of good food. I was sure they wouldn't easily let go of an obedient, free laborer like me. I had thought it would take a long time to get rid of them, but I didn't expect them to be so timid, giving up on me so easily. The next day, urged by my uncle, my father went through the adoption formalities with them. My aunt's in-laws were overjoyed when they found out. They took me to the mall, wanting to buy me clothes, shoes, and toys, everything they saw. The old couple truly liked me, because I was their granddaughter in the legal sense, and they didn't even know how to be good enough to me. In my previous life, I suffered for a lifetime, so naturally, I longed for those things, but I had to refuse. If Mom and Dad see me living too well, they'll ask Aunt for money, I said. Everyone knew Aunt was a brother supporter, and they also knew she had been giving my dad a lot of financial help over the years. My uncle's family had some money, and given that my aunt treated him well, they turned a blind eye, but if it meant giving more, they were unwilling. My uncle's health required annual maintenance, which was also a significant expense, so the elderly couple followed my suggestion, simply buying me 2 sets of affordable and good quality clothes and taking me to eat the grilled fish I had longed for in my previous life. Returning home, I happened to overhear my aunt telling my uncle that they should give my father more money as compensation for losing their daughter. I sighed. If it were the old me, I might have thought there was nothing wrong with my aunt's approach. Now, stepping back from the situation, I just find it laughable. They were the ones who abandoned me. Why should they compensate him? I asked my aunt. My aunt was stumped by the question. She had been brainwashed like that since childhood. Between her and her younger brother, it was always her brother who suffered, so she felt she had to compensate him. But my question made my aunt realize that her reasons for wanting to support her brother were somewhat inexplicable. I added, Aunt, the money you give to my dad, he just gambles it all away. You're actually harming him by doing this. I know that changing my aunt's mind isn't something that can be done with just a few words, but I can try to reduce her support for my dad by approaching it from the perspective of a brother helper. After a few months of relatively peaceful life, my aunt told me she was going to take me to stay at my house for a while. My mom went for a B ultrasound, and it was another girl, so she had an abortion. My dad asked my aunt to take care of her during the postpartum recovery period. I used to be able to take good care of my mom, but now that she's really afraid of me, she can only turn to my aunt. The reason she asked my aunt to take me along was probably because she still couldn't let go and wanted to see how I would behave. If I stopped talking nonsense, she might still want to take me back. Those two lazybones, without me, their lives would probably be a complete mess. I obediently followed my aunt back home. They didn't tidy up her room, so they just had her squeeze into the small room I had been sleeping in. My aunt worked all night, cleaning up the pile of garbage that had accumulated over several days. She returned to the room with an aching back and sore shoulders. As I massaged her shoulders, I sighed and said, "He doesn't treat you like family at all." My aunt, who was used to me speaking in an adult tone, didn't say anything, but I knew she was listening. In a way, she was the me from my previous life, so I understood all too well that her unconditional kindness toward my father was simply because she hadn't felt love from our grandparents and had instead placed her hopes on her younger brother. Unfortunately, the person who cared the least about her in this world was the very brother she had poured her heart and soul into. The next day, my dad had my aunt take care of my mom while he took me to kindergarten, but in reality, he didn't take me there at all, because the new kindergarten was a bit far from home. He took me straight to his workplace, dumped me with an intern, and then paid no further attention to me. Naturally, I didn't miss such a golden opportunity and, with the innocence of a child, told the intern all about how my dad was using his position to line his own pockets, still pulling at passers-by to listen to me. In my previous life, a few years later, the company faced a transformation and needed to review past records, only to discover that many accounts handled by my father didn't match up. To avoid going to prison, my father had to pay a large sum of money. He borrowed money everywhere and even considered marrying me off to an old man. I was just starting middle school back then, and they thought I was too young, so they didn't want me. Now that I have a chance to make things difficult for him, I naturally won't miss it. So, before lunchtime, my dad was fired, and the company is also planning to pursue legal action against him. My dad didn't want to go home, so he pulled me along with a dark expression, heading toward the mahjong parlor. Just my luck, let's go change my fortune. At the moment, he wasn't too concerned about losing his job, because his sister would definitely find him another one. It's not bad luck, I was the one who told them. My dad was taken aback for a moment. Tell what? Tell your boss, so he can fire you. Before my dad could react, I put on a stern face again and said mysteriously, "My sister said you'll never have a good life." During the time I was away, without me pretending to be possessed, my dad had almost forgotten about the sister they had casually aborted. Now that it's brought up again, he realizes once more that I am no longer his timid, obedient daughter, but a monster. Expressions of fear and panic flickered across his face one after another. He wanted to say something, but when he opened his mouth, nothing came out. I just watched him silently seething with anger, saying nothing from the sidelines. Finally, my dad gritted his teeth, as if making some kind of decision. "Sarah, how about Dad takes you to the park?" Without waiting for my answer, he sharply turned the steering wheel and drove toward the outskirts. The park my dad took me to was a wetland park, with a large river running through it. He ignored the warning sign, went down the slope, grabbed my arm, and pulled me to the shore. "Sarah," my dad's voice trembled with excitement. "Look, little fish." I could probably guess what he wanted to do. Though shocked, I wasn't afraid. In my previous life, when I worked part-time at a swimming pool, my supervisor taught me how to swim. We often swim for a while after the swimming pool closes, and then start cleaning. I followed his lead, stood on tiptoe, and looked in the direction he pointed. "Go to hell." Before the words even finished, my father kicked me into the water. "Dad, save me, Dad, save me," I shouted with all my might. Even if the surveillance couldn't capture me, I wanted it to record my voice. Then, I pretended to lose strength and slowly sank down. Through the clear river water, I saw my father's calm, retreating figure, holding my breath. I stayed submerged a little longer, making sure he couldn't see me before I came ashore. I didn't rush home. Instead, soaking wet, I accidentally made my way to the park management office, frantically begging them to save me. I deliberately didn't give them my home address or my parents' phone number, just kept repeating, "My dad wants to kill me. In our place, a girl's life is cheap, and a little girl's life is even cheaper, so even with solid evidence, my dad might not face any real punishment. My mother would understand him. And my aunt, his own sister, who is now my legal mother, would definitely not hold him accountable. I could only figure things out on my own, to seek justice for myself. In the early hours of the next morning, I was taken to the police station and waited for my aunt. It had only been a dozen hours since we last saw each other, but she already had white hair at her temples. I feel guilty in my heart, but there is no other way to make her realize the truth. My aunt was sobbing uncontrollably. I don't know what my father said to her, but she must have guessed what he had done to me. I gently wiped the tears from her face. Mom, can you be my mom? Let Uncle be my dad. I'm so scared. Although we were in an adoptive relationship, my aunt was afraid that my father would take me back, so she never allowed me to change how I addressed them. But today, she finally saw my father's true face and agreed without hesitation. All right. My aunt temporarily ignored my father. And my mother couldn't accept the fact that he intended to drown me, so she had a big argument with him, but they didn't call the police, and no outsiders knew what this man had done to his own biological daughter. Unfortunately, I won't keep the secret. After resting at home for a few days, the first thing I did when I returned to kindergarten was to tell my teacher that my father had almost killed me. The teacher thought I was talking nonsense, but after hearing my vivid description, she hesitated for a long time and ultimately decided to call the police. 2 days later, my aunt received a call from the police. My father had been arrested. Not only had the surveillance camera captured my voice, but a fisherman nearby had unintentionally recorded the scene of my father kicking me into the river and walking away indifferently. Auntie was getting a bit anxious, urging Uncle to quickly find someone to come up with a solution. I grabbed her hand, trying to calm her down. Mom, if we don't teach him a lesson, he might really kill someone in the future. Would you be able to face the Chen family? That's right, honey, you're really harming him by doing this. My aunt remained silent for a long time before letting out a sigh. My uncle and I exchanged a glance, both secretly relieved. Although my aunt did not press charges, my father was still not sentenced, because the hospital determined that he had schizophrenia. He was convinced that I intended to harm him, claiming I was possessed by a ghost and wanted to kill me, so he decided to strike first. The doctor believed he was suffering from persecutory delusions, a key indicator of schizophrenia. In my previous life, I endured his psychological abuse for over 40 years. Yet it was never like this. He couldn't handle being frightened by me just a few times. How laughable, given that there was already a social harm. My father was forcibly sent to a mental institution. My aunt cried for a long time, feeling sorry for my deceased grandparents. My mother applied for a forced divorce, intending to take my father's house for herself and return to her parents' home. However, the house actually belonged to my uncle and her parents' family. Upon learning that she was haunted by something unclean, considered her unlucky and refused to let her return. The good days were over, and she was left homeless. My aunt was down for a while, but not for long. My uncle and I spent all day comforting her, helping her quickly move past her self-blame. That day, the electronic artwork my uncle had been quietly working on at home won a major award and earned him a 30,000 yuan prize. He was as happy as a child. Let's go to the mountains to soak in the hot springs and stay overnight. Auntie was also happy for him, but she didn't agree. That must be quite expensive. She knew she had spent a lot of her husband's money for my father, so she was very frugal. Once in a while is fine, Jenny, don't you think so? I nodded firmly. Yes, I'm really looking forward to it. My first trip in 2 lifetimes. Right now, I'm still young and spending my aunt and uncle's money. When I grow up, I'll work hard to earn money and spend it on my aunt and uncle. By the way, I changed my name from Sarah Chen to Jenny Chen. The Sarah in my name means to die young. It carries my parents' wish for me to die young. After my uncle learned that I would be living with them permanently, he immediately changed my name, and so, the weekend getaway was settled. The weather in November was still quite warm, but when my aunt was halfway through driving, far from the city, snowflakes suddenly began to drift down from the sky. I was sitting in the passenger seat, watching the snowflakes land on the windshield and instantly melt, when I suddenly fell into an endless panic. I wasn't entirely sure of the exact time my aunt and uncle had met their fate in my previous life, only that it was on the day of the first snow, and they died in a traffic accident. So, is it today? I started crying and fussing, insisting on going home immediately. My aunt and uncle, who doted on me, tried to comfort me but couldn't calm me down, so they turned around at the nearest service area without a word and headed home. But we still had to spend the money. so we went to the mall and treated my grandparents to a big meal. The next day, my aunt asked me with a pale face, "Jenny, why did you insist on going home yesterday? It seems there was indeed a serious traffic accident yesterday, but we managed to avoid it." I suddenly feel very scared. Scared of what? I don't know. My aunt didn't ask any more questions, just held me tightly without saying a word. I patted her trembling body, which she couldn't control. "It's all over now, and from now on, our family will be fine." In second grade, my dad was released from the mental hospital, perhaps because he was forced to take medication despite not being ill. He was completely listless, as if he had truly developed a mental illness. My aunt felt heartbroken and wanted to bring him to live with us. My father glanced at me standing behind my aunt, his eyes darting away as he repeatedly refused. When they tried to arrange a job for him, he declined that too, perhaps to avoid me. My father went to work in another city. He, who used to constantly sponge off his aunt, now occasionally sends money back. Auntie didn't want it, but he said it was for me. He didn't fulfill his responsibilities as a father before and wants to make up for it now. Auntie was filled with emotion, feeling that her younger brother had finally grown up. However, the good times did not last long. In less than 3 years, my father was severely injured due to a coworker's violation of safety procedures and was not expected to live much longer. My aunt and uncle took me to the local hospital overnight. Looking at him struggling to hold on, I felt nothing inside. "Sis, I want to talk to Sarah, alone." Aunt and uncle quickly left the hospital room and closed the door. I stood by the hospital bed, looking down at him without saying a word. "Sarah, my name is Jenny Chen now. Jenny, I'm going to die. Your sister, forgive, will she forgive?" I clenched my hands tightly, doing my utmost to control my body, which was trembling slightly with excitement. From the moment I was reborn, I had been looking forward to this day. I hoped for a scene like this to resolve the resentment in my heart, but I never thought this day would come so quickly. I couldn't help but laugh, yet my heart felt heavy. Because through my father, I saw the miserable self from my past life, but I still did as I had always imagined. I interrupted him. "What are you thinking? There was never any sister. It was just an excuse I used to stop you from having a brother." My father's pleading gaze seemed to freeze, then turned into anger. Unfortunately, before he could say anything, he choked on his breath, stared wide-eyed, and died just like that. In such a careless manner. Numbly, I pulled open the door, walked out, and told my aunt. Aunt rushed in crying, and I stood there somewhat bewildered, suddenly unsure of where to go. "Jenny, don't be sad. You still have me and your mother." Uncle gently ruffled my hair with his deformed hand. I looked up, seeing the worry in Uncle's eyes, and finally let out the turbid air in my heart. "Yes, I still have them. My life is about to completely open a new chapter." After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. On a stormy day, I advised my sister to wait until the rain eased up before heading to the airport, but in the end, she still didn't make it in time to see her beloved off. 5 years later, both of us successfully passed the postgraduate entrance exams, achieved career success, and have a bright future ahead. At the celebration banquet for advancing to higher education, glasses clinked and toasts were exchanged as everyone offered their congratulations. A relative inadvertently mentioned that her beloved had fallen ill and passed away in a foreign land. Everyone sighed over the brevity of life, emphasizing the importance of cherishing the present moment. My younger sister, with tears welling in her eyes, stumbled over to offer me a toast. "Sis, thank you for that year. Without you, I wouldn't have such a happy present." 3 days later, I woke up startled from my sleep, surrounded by raging flames. Beyond the firelight, my sister's eyes were bloodshot. "If you hadn't meddled back then, I could have kept brother been here. He wouldn't have gone abroad, and he wouldn't have died. It's all your fault. Go pay with your life." I died in the raging flames. When I opened my eyes, I was back on that day of the heavy rain. This time, seeing her take the umbrella to leave, I didn't utter a word. I'd like to see, in this lifetime, if I don't meddle, what kind of happy life she can actually lead. At the college celebration banquet, my sister and I became the center of attention in the private room. No wonder, one family produced 2 graduate students, and everyone was filled with admiration. Once the dishes were served, everyone picked up their chopsticks, and the atmosphere was joyful and harmonious. Just as everyone was enjoying the meal, the aunt smacked her lips and pointed her chopsticks at the younger sister. "Alice, your sister is about to get engaged. Do you have a partner?" My sister has always hated it when people ask about this. Her slender, Pale fingers lightly stroked the stem of the wine glass, not even lifting her eyelids. Seeing this, I raised my glass and said, "Auntie, it's all because of you that Alice doesn't have a partner." "What does her not having a partner have to do with me?" I smiled politely. "Right, but what does her being single have to do with you?" Everyone caught on and burst into laughter. My parents scolded me half-heartedly, while my aunt muttered under her breath, "If it were because of me, that would be fine, but I hope it's not because of Bruce." Bruce is the child of the neighbor across from my aunt's house, and we've been playing together since we were little, when we were kids. My sister even said she wanted to be his wife. My sister said casually, "Kids just play around, but adults take it seriously." "But how is he doing abroad? How is he?" Auntie wrinkled her nose. "He passed away a couple of days ago. I heard he caught some illness and didn't make it back to the country in time before he was gone. Good thing you didn't go with him that year, in my opinion. The medical standards abroad are still too poor." Alice's hand trembled, spilling the drink all over. I quickly handed her a tissue, my heart also skipping a beat. He was about the same age as us. How could this happen so suddenly? Everyone else sighed in disbelief as well. It's a pity to be so young. On the road to the underworld, there is no distinction between old and young. The atmosphere in the room was momentarily shrouded in gloom. Uncle, who had experience in business, saw everyone's low spirits and quickly tried to smooth things over. "Today is a celebration for these two kids' academic success. Let's not spoil the mood. Life is short, so we must cherish the present moment even more." Everyone raised their glasses in agreement, and the atmosphere eased considerably. Under the dazzling lights, a glimmer of moisture shimmered in the eyes of Alice Smith, the younger sister. She stumbled to her feet and also toasted me. "Sis, I owe it all to you back then. Otherwise I wouldn't have this happy life now." At the time, I didn't think much of it and downed the drink in one gulp, but I never expected. The word happiness was spoken through gritted teeth. The day after the meeting ended, my sister invited me for a walk by the sea. Over the years, we've been studying for graduate school in different cities and have rarely seen each other. The wind is too strong outside. It's easy to get blown into the sea. Your brother-in-law is away on a business trip. Why not come stay with me for a couple of days? I'm a bit scared being alone anyway. We can chat as much as we want, just the two of us. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "All right then." Alice had heavy dark circles under her eyes and looked very pale. I asked her what was wrong. She shook her head, hung her red wool coat on the coat rack, and forced a smile. "Nothing, just couldn't sleep." After she finished touring the esports room for two that her boyfriend had set up, she couldn't help but murmur, "Your brother-in-law did this, didn't he? You're so lucky." I was taken aback and handed her the coffee. "Mom said you turned down a rich, handsome guy, yet you're still envious of me. It's not suitable." She took a small sip, perhaps because it was unsweetened, and a bitter expression appeared on her face. "If it's not suitable, you shouldn't settle. The right person will wait until the end." What if the right person has already been lost? I thought she was talking about that tall, rich, and handsome guy, so I didn't take it seriously. If you lose them, they weren't the right person. She stirred her coffee and smiled bitterly. "Maybe." In the evening, I was curled up on the couch watching a drama when she handed me a cup of warm milk. "Sis, drink this before bed to help you sleep." For a moment, I felt that my younger sister had grown up and become more considerate, but I never expected. It was this glass of milk that left me completely unaware, even when I was tied to a chair. The pungent smell of alcohol, with a towel stuffed in my mouth. I thought I had been kidnapped and was still worried about my sister. "Stop looking, sis, I'm right here." Alice Smith walked around to stand in front of me, holding a lighter, ignoring my struggles. She looked utterly despondent. "Sis, do you know why I've endured all these years of loneliness? I was waiting for Brother Ben, but what does his death have to do with me?" Alice's face darkened, his eyes bloodshot. "If you hadn't told me to wait for the rain to ease up before leaving that day, I wouldn't have ended up in a taxi that broke down halfway. If I had arrived on time, he wouldn't have gone abroad, and he wouldn't have died. It's all your fault that we're separated by life and death. Go to hell." I never could have imagined. Unintentional concern has led to such an outcome. I truly regret it. If only I could start over. I would never meddle in her affairs again. The alcohol was ignited. The fire grew larger and larger, with burning pain spreading all over the body, and the lungs felt suffocated. Consciousness gradually faded away. In a daze, the sound of pouring rain echoed in the ears. Suddenly opened my eyes. Outside the window, a torrential downpour raged, a vast expanse of white. Inside the room, against the pale greenish-white wall, in the full-length mirror of the old-fashioned wardrobe door. I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, with my hair tied in a ponytail. This was my favorite outfit during my university days. Reborn, Heavy Rain, the blood test scene from Empresses in the Palace, is playing on TV. Alice, with the umbrella set aside, bent over to put on her shoes. This scene is all too familiar to me. In my previous life, seeing the heavy rain, I advised her to wait until it lightened up before heading to the airport. Unexpectedly, she missed seeing Bruce off and blamed his death on me. At this moment, I was silently eating melon and watching the drama. I just wanted to see, in this lifetime without me holding her back, what kind of happy life Alice Smith could lead. Not long after she left, my parents came back. Hearing that my sister had gone out, she scolded me harshly. "It's pouring rain outside, why didn't you stop her? What if she follows and leaves too?" I raised my hand, and the watermelon rind landed right in the bucket. "Mom, if you're afraid she'll leave, why are you still going out to play mahjong? And you, Dad, didn't you say that once you're an adult, you have to be independent? Sister isn't a 3-year-old child either. If she doesn't listen, is it my fault?" The two of them were left speechless. My mom scolded me for being cold to my own sister. I smiled. Cold is putting it mildly. If I weren't curious about how her life would turn out, I would have wanted to strangle her just now. My parents don't want my sister to get too close to Bruce, because his father had an affair with a wealthy woman, and his mother was literally driven to death by the anger. Although his family background is not good, it doesn't stop my sister from liking him. No wonder. Bruce had thick eyebrows and big eyes since childhood, and he was eloquent. Not only did my sister and I enjoy playing with him, but other children also flocked around him. After we attended the same university, although I grew my hair long, my carefree and straightforward personality remained unchanged. I never even noticed any clues, not even when my sister blushed every time she mentioned him. The sun had set, and the afterglow filled the room. Bruce didn't leave and even brought Alice Smith back. My mother didn't give my sister a friendly look. "I'm telling you, his family background isn't good. You should keep some distance from him." Alice brushed it off, treating him like an older brother, but my mom was overthinking it. Then she stomped back to her room in a huff. I got up in the middle of the night. From Alice's room came a faint but unmistakably excited voice. "Brother Ben, do you know, today is the best decision I've ever made in my life. I never expected you to stay for me." "It's okay, after graduation, I will definitely convince them to accept you." Climbing into bed, I tossed and turned. I never expected that my unintentional actions in my past life actually ruined a marriage, but even if I ignore it, and my parents are kept in the dark, what can be done? There will still be people who don't want to see them together. In the library, Alice Smith had her hair styled in an exquisite fishbone braid. With a faint blush on her fair cheeks, she sat by the window, fiddling with her phone and occasionally glancing around. I pretended not to see her and sat far away from her. Just as I opened my laptop, I received a text message from her. "Sis, why aren't you here yet? Let's go eat. Could you get 2 bowls of rice noodles for me and my roommate, 1 regular, 1 extra spicy? I'll wait for you at the library." I didn't reply. In our previous life, our parents gave us money to top up our meal cards. She secretly bought makeup to dress up, while I, the naive older sister, bought her meals, sometimes even 2 portions at a time. "I'm not hungry. If you want to eat, go by yourself." She complained that I was stingy, and after sitting for only a short while, she hurriedly left. Since there were no classes in the afternoon anyway, I didn't get up to go to the cafeteria until after the usual mealtime. There's a small path from the library to the cafeteria. It's a bit remote, but with few people around. It's still a place of blooming flowers and lush trees, with birds singing and flowers fragrant. As I walked, stretching my limbs, I unexpectedly saw a couple embracing intimately under a large tree to the right ahead. The boy was tall and thin, with sharp features. He looked a bit like Bruce, and the girl in his arms, with her dark hair braided into a fishtail, looked particularly familiar. Alice Smith, as her profile flashed by. It was indeed her. I almost interrupted their lovely moment. I quickly turned around and took another route. Back at the library entrance, I ran into the instructor reprimanding a student. Our instructor is famously known in the department as the exterminating nun. Her face was stern, and her presence felt as imposing as someone 1.8 meters tall. The girl standing opposite her is named Susan. I heard someone mention the other day that she also likes Bruce. As they spoke, they walked toward the garden. We arrived at the cafeteria a bit late, and the serving aunt was already packing up to leave. She glanced at her watch and picked up the spoon. I'll leave as soon as I finish for you, there's something urgent at home, just swipe your meal card. I was extremely grateful and immediately started rummaging through my pockets, but my meal card was nowhere to be found. Oh no, could it have been left in the library? My stomach growled loudly, and the cafeteria lady frowned. Just at this moment of utter embarrassment, a clear voice came from the corner of the hall. "Auntie, serve her, I'll pay. It's our class monitor, Nancy. Her smile is as refreshing as a spring breeze. What are you standing there for? Take it away." She nudged me, and I quickly took it over. Nancy was usually quiet and kept a distance from everyone. All of this stemmed from the fact that people in the class didn't like her. It was simply because she came from the mountains, and everyone looked down on her for being poor. Some people even secretly mocked her when they heard she had never eaten a mango, and she never tries to please anyone. She puts on her headphones and recites vocabulary. "Thank you for earlier. I think I left my meal card in the library." The fabric at the collar of her clothes had already faded, and she took off her headphones, giving me a calm smile. "It's fine," watching her turn to leave. I hesitated for a moment before calling out to her, "Class monitor, could you accompany me to the library to look for my meal card?" She was taken aback, perhaps not expecting me to ask for her help. She grinned and nodded happily. At the library entrance, a person was standing on the steps. It was Susan. She had her back to us, seemingly wiping away tears and complaining to someone on the other end. "Bruce has already accepted my love letter, but he was actually with Alice Smith in the garden." She heard our approaching footsteps and stopped speaking, then hurried away. I thought Nancy would be curious and ask me about it, but since I didn't say anything, she acted as if she hadn't heard anything either. However, just 2 days later, a photo of the two of them sharing a passionate kiss had already spread across the campus network. Their relationship quickly became the talk of the town. It's actually quite normal to have a relationship in college, but Alice Smith's reputation doesn't seem to be very good, even just going to wash up. I could hear people gossiping about me. "That's the sister who stole Susan's boyfriend." Susan had been pursuing him for a long time, and Bruce even accepted her love letter. "Her sister is really bold, still trying to flirt with him shamelessly." I brush my teeth as usual and wash my face as usual. I pretend not to hear any of it. Who has time to care about her? I still have to go study. In my previous life, although I eventually succeeded in the postgraduate entrance exam, it took me several years after graduation to achieve it. In this life, I don't want to waste that much time again. Nancy asked me why I wasn't with Alice Smith anymore. I smiled and told her, "We're not on the same path." In my previous life, I would drag Alice Smith to the library to study every single day. After Bruce went abroad, she became even more absent-minded. I thought she had a crush on Bruce and even comforted her. "Work hard, maybe you'll meet again at the peak." She then buried herself in her studies. At this moment, I can't help but sigh. Perhaps in my previous life, I was too self-righteous. The two of them can meet now, so why must they wait until they reach the peak? Nancy and I encouraged each other, and our relationship grew better and better. Bruce might have been unable to withstand the gossip, so he officially announced his relationship with his younger sister on social media. I heard that Susan cried for several days over this, and after having a big fight with Bruce, she was labeled as a discarded woman and dropped out of school within a few days. Now that the obstacle was gone, the two of them became even more brazen at school. I had been wondering why the counselor hadn't talked to her. It was only later that I found out the counselor had left temporarily that day due to some business. The scene of the two embracing and kissing was witnessed only by Susan herself. It's still somewhat fortunate. I was too naive. How could paper ever wrap up fire? Alice Smith's relationship was still found out by my mother. She insisted on going to school to find Bruce, and my mother slapped her hard. She angrily grabbed a few pieces of clothing and ran off. Probably, that night, my mother realized for the first time that I, who studied late into the night, was the one who truly put her mind at ease. My sister hasn't come home for 3 days, and my mom is completely bewildered. She looks utterly exhausted. "Fiona, if your dad finds out your sister is staying out when he gets back from his business trip, he'll kill her. Try to persuade your sister to come back when you go to school." Listening to the buzzing sound of the electric drill upstairs, I looked troubled. "I can. But there's a condition." Perhaps because my mother lowered her head to apologize, and my father's birthday was also approaching, or perhaps it was because she had argued with Bruce. Alice Smith returned home covered in dust and grime. My mother asked her where she had been staying these past few nights. She rubbed the bridge of her nose with her fingertips. "I squeezed in at my classmate's dormitory for a few nights." My mother told her she was not allowed to contact Bruce anymore. Alice Smith puffed out her cheeks, her expression instantly changing. Don't mention him, he's such a jerk. My mom was overjoyed to hear that. She happened to receive a call from a mahjong friend and hurriedly put on her shoes. My daughter is the most obedient. After graduation, she must find someone even better. Alice Smith pouted. In the future, I'll find someone 10,000 times better than him. Seeing his puffed up, angry expression, I sneered. Truly letting go of someone isn't like this. She did quiet down for a few days, but only after my dad's birthday. She probably made up with Bruce, and then came back to me to dig up old grievances. Did you and Mom talk about our business? I was already annoyed by the sound of chairs being dragged upstairs late at night, creaking and all. Now she's here again, nagging and complaining. Suppressing my anger, I pressed my temples. I don't have the time for that. With a wave of her hand, the desk lamp instantly crashed to the floor. Fiona Smith. Stop pretending like it's none of your business and you're above it all. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. I took a sip of soda water, trying to calm myself down. Then tell me, what am I thinking? She pursed her lips tightly, her face burning with jealousy. Seeing us together bothers you so much. Do you also have feelings for Brother Bin? After all, we all grew up together. I nearly choked on a sip of water. I was so angry I laughed. Do you really think all the women in the world like him? Come on, sis, not everyone who grows up together is a childhood sweetheart. Okay. Watching the tilted lamp on the floor flicker on and off, I called my mom over, who was in the middle of cooking. She spoke on my behalf. Don't blame your sister. I saw him dropping you off from upstairs. Alice's face flushed with anger, and she stomped her foot. You're lying to me. Ever since I picked him up from the airport, I haven't let him drop me off. How could he possibly come to our building? You're just favoring my sister. I don't want to live in this house anymore. Give me money. I'm moving out. It's either her or me in this home. I suppressed my glee, ignoring her outburst. Mom, see, I told you. I knew she'd blame me. I promised you that day I would bring her back, and I should move out. Is this for real? I successfully moved out. My mom knows I'm focusing on preparing for the graduate school entrance exam. During those days, there was always construction upstairs, so I couldn't study or sleep well. On top of that, Alice Smith caused a fuss for no reason. Most importantly, it was because I was sharing the rent with our class monitor, Nancy, that my mom finally agreed without hesitation. But there's one thing I don't understand. Alice Smith said Bruce never gave her anything, but who was the person my mom saw that day? Could it be that she recognized the wrong person? Did she just happen to bluff it out by coincidence? Whatever, it doesn't matter anymore. In the days that followed, Nancy and I focused solely on studying. We both had part-time jobs, so we were self-sufficient when it came to food and drink. Sometimes, when I ran into Alice Smith at school, I kept my distance. I was afraid she might have another issue and try to pin it on me again. In the blink of an eye, spring passed and autumn arrived. We graduated. Just a few days after receiving our diplomas, Nancy and I signed up to prepare for the exam. In the dormitory, Nancy received a phone call and said she needed to go to the bank to take care of some business. I thought about celebrating, so I went out and bought some meatballs to have hot pot. When I was carrying all the bags back home, I saw Nancy had returned and was packing her luggage. What's wrong with you? Her voice was hoarse, as if she had just been crying. My younger brother is seriously ill, and my mother asked me to go back. I'm sorry, Fiona, I can't be with you these few days. I'll try my best to come back before the exam. I suddenly remembered the graduation reunion in my previous life, where my classmate said she went home just before the postgraduate entrance exam. Her younger brother was unconscious and vomiting. The doctor in the mountains suspected he had a brain tumor and needed a craniotomy, but her family had no money, so she had no choice but to get married. The bride price was used to treat his younger brother's illness. At that time, the classmates were all sighing with emotion. Nancy's brother prepared the money and, after a series of examinations at the hospital, found that there was no tumor in his head. Instead, it was a tapeworm. So I know, once she goes back, she won't be able to return. I quickly grabbed her hand. Nancy, don't panic just yet. I've read some information before. Coma and vomiting don't necessarily mean there's a tumor in the brain. That can only be confirmed after a CT scan. The 2 tear streaks on her cheeks hadn't dried yet, and new tears were already flowing. There's no place to get a CT scan in the mountains. You have to go into the city. I've saved up this money by scrimping and saving, so a CT scan is no problem. But if there's any other illness, I can't afford the surgery either. She's right, a craniotomy would cost a lot. Wait for me a moment. I went back to my room and called my mom. When my mom heard I wanted to borrow money, she became restless. "Your sister has been driving me crazy these past few days, and now you're asking for money again." Even though she said that, after hanging up the phone, she still transferred $5,000 to me. I also took out my own bank card, scraped together $15,000. "First, send this money home so your mom can take your brother for an x-ray. For the rest, we'll figure it out together. Otherwise, even if you go back, you won't have any money and will just be anxious. Are you planning to get married or something?" Her eyes moistened, and she stood there for a long time without speaking. "Even if you get married and receive a bride price, you'll be locked in the mountains for the rest of your life. To put it bluntly, if your son falls ill in the future, will you have to give birth to another daughter and marry her off too?" In truth, I regretted saying those words as soon as they left my mouth. I had said I wouldn't interfere with the karma of others, but I feel that if I watch her ruin her bright future, my conscience can't bear it. I silently tell myself to shut up. Everything depends on her choice. She pondered for a moment, wiping her face. "Fiona, you're right. It wasn't easy to leave the mountains, and I can't go back now. I've been hesitating too, but your words have strengthened my resolve. Perhaps this is a test from heaven. Go ahead and transfer the money. I believe my brother will be fine." After Nancy left, I was about to wash the vegetables. Little did I expect that before one wave subsided, another rose. Alice Smith called me. The first thing she said was, "Sis, please help me. Alice Smith is pregnant. 3 months, bruises." The night I ran away after arguing with my mom, I went out with him and ended up pregnant. My dad was always away on business trips, and my mom was addicted to mahjong every day. No one noticed the high, round belly hidden beneath her loose clothes. I never even thought about it in that way. "Sis, I lied and borrowed some money from mom. I just didn't expect that for the surgery. I'd need a family member to accompany me. Go find the child's father. Why come to me?" We had a fight. Actually, I didn't want to do it either, but he said some harsh words and told me to get rid of it. It turns out that after graduation, my sister lied about finding a new job, using the excuse of inconvenient transportation. She also moved out to live on her own, but in reality, she went out to prepare for childbirth. "I don't have time. You can either talk to mom or discuss it with the child's father." I didn't care about her crying and hung up the phone directly. In the following days, I immersed myself in a sea of practice questions every day. Nancy received a call from her mother, saying that her brother had a worm in his head. It can be removed with minimally invasive surgery. Seeing her cheerful demeanor, I was also very happy. "Now you can focus on your studies." She gave me a big hug right away. Although the surgery still needs some time, but at least she can prepare for the exam with peace of mind. The night before the graduate school entrance exam, I received 2 pieces of news. Nancy's brother's surgery was very successful. Alice Smith is going to get engaged to Bruce. After finishing the exam, I was urged by my parents to go back and attend my sister's engagement banquet. Alice Smith has gained weight, but my parents and Bruce have both lost weight. It's been a few months since we last saw each other. Alice Smith, who used to look good in anything she wore, is now dressed in a loose, high-waisted gown. It doesn't fit her at all and looks very cumbersome. She held Bruce's arm and introduced him to relatives and friends. Bruce's smile seemed somewhat forced, as if it were put on under pressure. My parents' smiles were even more strained, especially my father's. His face, full of wrinkles, was accustomed to putting on a professional smile in work settings. At this moment, facing relatives and friends, their smiles appeared somewhat stiff. My mother was doing all right. She has always been easygoing. However, as the two of them peered toward the stairwell, their eyes still carried a hint of worry. That look, it lasted until the engagement began, and I didn't see my aunt there. Perhaps they were afraid my aunt would talk nonsense, but in this world, how could she be the only one with a big mouth? At the table, a woman with permed hair was watching Alice Smith and Bruce toasting. She couldn't help but gossip. "I heard those 2 kids had a fight before and were about to abort the baby in her belly." Coincidentally, the nurse in the obstetrics department of that hospital knew Lucy. "Lucy is my mom." Lucy was furious. An old song was so angry he wanted to kill someone, but in the end, when they heard that having an abortion at such a late stage could harm her body and might prevent her from getting pregnant again, they went to find that guy. They said they would sue him if he didn't marry her, and that's why they rushed into an engagement. Another auntie curled her lip. "And just graduated, getting married so early. Her whole life is ruined. Why would getting married early ruin her life?" The voice came from a young woman sitting next to me. With a displeased expression, she lifted her shirt to breastfeed the child in her arms. but to be honest, she looks so youthful, like a girl who just turned 18, if it weren't for how effortlessly she lifted her clothes. I would have thought the one in my arms was her little brother. When our child grows up, won't we still be as young as a girl? A few aunties murmured that she was still too young. Once a woman has a family, she becomes tied down, even if she looks no different from a young girl. Her mindset is definitely not the same. She scoffed disdainfully, picked up her child, and moved to another table. A few older women also shook their heads helplessly. Not long after getting engaged, the two of them got married. After all, if we don't get married soon, the baby will be born. As for me, after successfully getting into graduate school, Nancy and I traveled all over the place for quite a while. She sipped on fresh coconut juice, watching me turn down yet another offer from a big company, and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Aren't you going to consider it? Could it be you already have a job in mind?" I smiled at her. Although my previous life didn't end well, I accidentally chose a major I loved, and I met my boyfriend. I want to go to a research institute and work on chemical research. She gave me a thumbs up. Wow, that's really impressive. Future great scientist. I chuckled. What about you? Any plans? Her eyes crinkled. Architecture. The mountain road to my home is hard to walk, especially on cloudy or rainy days. It gets terribly muddy. I want to design a long path that leads straight to our place. Even better if it does. Her face lit up with anticipation as she spoke, gesturing with her hands. Oh, that's really wonderful. A future great architect in the making. She chuckled, then suddenly remembered something and pulled a bank card from her bag. Fiona, thanks to you for covering my brother's surgery and graduate school expenses back then. If it weren't for you, I told her to pay me back once she started working. And she looked at me with a bright smile. Just take it, I've already found a job. If you don't accept it, I'll always feel uneasy and won't be able to focus on my work. She insisted on stuffing it into my pocket, so I finally accepted it. Hainan is warm all year round. The sunlight is dazzling and bright. Seagulls flew by in pairs in the distance, and we shared a coconut. Then let's wish for a promising future for both of us. Absolutely, a promising future awaits. I had only been back for a couple of days when I received the resume from the research institute. Just as I had hoped, the thought of being able to work in the same industry as in my previous life filled me with joy. That night, as I lay in bed scrolling through my social media feed, I came across Alice Smith. She had cut her hair short, and her loose t-shirt was stained. It seems having a home has made you less concerned about your image. In the video, she boasted about how well Bruce treated her and their newborn child. I scrolled down a bit and saw that she had practically flooded her social media feed. It was either Bruce's back as he did the laundry or cooked, or his back as he tidied up the house. The copy is brimming with pride. My ever-obedient husband. My husband is so capable. Marrying the right person is such a blessing. In my previous life, I heard plenty of gossip and news about colleagues, so I've gained some understanding of men. I know he is so dedicated and responsible. They were afraid my parents might get angry and take back the house. My parents saw that he often worked late at the KTV and couldn't take care of Alice Smith. In a moment of determination, they spent most of their savings to buy a ground floor shop for my sister. They even paid for the inventory and helped the two of them open a small supermarket. Bruce only needs to deliver goods every morning, and my sister collects the money. He occasionally plays mahjong and doesn't have to endure hardship. Life is carefree and comfortable, but seeing Alice Smith's satisfied expression, I can't help but doubt it. Perhaps what Alice Smith wants is this kind of simple happiness. It seems I really hindered her pursuit of happiness in my previous life, but I never expected it. Alice Smith's happy married life came to an abrupt end 3 years later. After entering the factory, I found my work to be a breeze. This made the team leader look at me in a new light. During the lunch break, the two of us teamed up for a game. I instinctively asked him if he needed help snagging Thresh. He was completely taken aback. You know I don't like wearing watches. Fine. You know I love blues so much I can't resist it. Fine. The most crucial thing is, you actually know that my favorite role to play is support, and it's Thresh. Where did you come from? A spy? You must have investigated the wrong person. I smiled without saying a word. Maybe we knew each other in a past life. All forces advance. We both arrived at the lower tower. With a divine hook, he directly pulled the enemy over, but the opposing jungler was counter-ganking. Just before he died, I took out the enemy marksman with a sliver of health left, flashed back under the tower to grab the health pack. Not bad. At least my death wasn't in vain. I sneered. That's not enough. Pretended to recall in place. Then waited until out of sight to sneak into the brush. Sure enough, the jungler was greedy and couldn't bear to give up the minion wave. At level 4, I directly used my ultimate from the bushes as Eileen and took him out as soon as I emerged. The red buff transferred to me. I then stuck to the level 3 deer on the enemy team who was trying to save Lon, securing a massive KO. I've avenged you, oh my god, that was so cool. I smiled. That expression of surprise and admiration was exactly the same as when we first played together in our previous life. We bonded over our shared love for gaming. After getting married, we even decorated a gaming room together. He is my boyfriend from my previous life, Tom. In the days that followed, we supported each other at work. In private, we often played games together. Gradually, we started walking together. During that time, we kept each other company and comforted one another. Hard work pays off. Our polymer experiment was successful, and we received a substantial bonus. Hugging each other, they wept with joy, but I never expected that on the day I planned to bring Tom home. My sister also returned to our parents' house with her 3-year-old nephew. We hadn't been in touch since she gave birth. I've been so busy these days that I haven't even had time to check my social media, so I had no idea that she had completely deleted all the videos of our loving moments. When I opened the door, I caught a glimpse of her sitting on the sofa. Alice Smith is only 25 years old, yet she already has a patch of white hair at her forehead. If you didn't look closely, you'd think she was an elderly woman. I've heard from a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner that only those who are overly anxious grow it in this spot. She glanced back at me. Her eyes had lost their former luster, filled with nothing but exhaustion. She was patting her crying nephew in her arms mechanically, one pat after another. The nephew, whose face was smeared like a little kitten, was fussing and demanding to go home. My mother saw Tom and me carrying large and small bags, and she glared fiercely at Alice. Your sister brought her boyfriend home, can't you just coax him properly? Alice Smith's hand paused. She stopped patting. But suddenly, she raised her paused hand and gave her nephew's bottom a hard smack. Slap. My heart tightened. The child's crying instantly grew even louder. Shut up, if you keep making noise, I'll beat you to death. As she cursed, she carried the child into the bedroom with a grim expression. The sound of her cursing and the child's crying in the bedroom was unbearable to hear. I wanted to pull Tom away and come back another day, but my mother held me tightly. Mom hasn't seen you in so long. Have a bite to eat before you go. Ever since she bought a house for her younger sister, she hasn't even played mahjong anymore. She started working as a cleaner, and now she looks much older. But can this meal be eaten in peace? I glanced at Tom, and he gave me a gentle smile. He signaled that it was okay, thinking about the next project starting soon. I wouldn't be able to come back for a while, so I had no choice but to sit down. The nephew was coaxed to sleep, and my sister, with her hair loosely tied, sat down at the table. At the dinner table, she watched as Mom kept putting food on my plate, not saying a word. When my mom heard we had received a bonus, her eyes grew moist. Mom, do you remember Nancy? She passed her postgraduate entrance exam, which is also quite good. She actually wanted to come today too, but something came up and she couldn't make it. As I spoke, I pulled out a bank card. She asked me to pass this on to you. She's really grateful for the help you gave back then. My mom absolutely refused to take it. I didn't give much. That child is good. I don't want it anymore. Just consider it as me doing a good deed. I only hope this family can be safe and sound. Alice stopped chewing the food in her mouth and brushed aside the stray hairs on her forehead. Mom, my sister has been preparing for the postgraduate entrance exam for so many years. You must have given her money in private, right? I came to borrow some money today, and you said you don't have any. Are you unwilling to give it to me, or are you saving it for my sister's dowry? Afraid I won't be able to support you in your old age, so you gave it all to her. My mother looked embarrassed. Tom ate quickly, then patted me as if nothing had happened. Fiona, I need to call our manager back. It's a bit hot anyway, so I'll go buy some juice while I'm at it. I nodded. After the door closed, no one in the room spoke. Alice rested her hand on the chair, waiting for my mother to answer, but my mother just kept her head down, unhurriedly stuffing rice into her mouth. Only, as she ate, tears fell into the bowl with a patter. My heart ached too, and I glared fiercely at Alice Smith. After swallowing the last bite of food, my mother let out a long sigh. Over all these years, the more than 1 million yuan your dad and I saved has all been given to you. Your sister never asked me for a single cent. Even the dowry money your dad and I had set aside for your sister was used to pay off your and Bruce's debts. If you keep pushing us like this, just take our 2 old lives. That's when I realized Bruce's mahjong wasn't enough for him. he had gotten into online gambling. At first, he won and bought Alice all sorts of things, lying to her that it was from investments. Alice believed him and even mortgaged their house. Now, they've lost the supermarket to gambling and are living in a rented place. He humbled himself, saying he wanted to provide a better life for his wife and children. Alice softened, repeatedly coming to borrow money, and even said she would divorce him after helping him pay off his debts. My mother, feeling sorry for the child, took out all her savings. Unexpectedly, the two reconciled and secretly remarried within a few days. My mom knew this was a bottomless pit. She went back to her room, took out her retirement savings, and said calmly, "You owe 400,000 yuan, here's 200,000. Your dad and I will sell this house and move back to the countryside. After the sale, we'll give you another 200,000 to pay off your debt. The rest is for your sister. What your father and I have given you is far more than what we've given her. From now on, we sever our mother-daughter relationship. Don't come back again." Alice Smith's eyes lit up when she heard there was still money, but she was still afraid my mother meant it, so she softened her tone. "Mom, don't say that. I'll pay you back." My mother shook her head, her face filled with despair. "No need to pay it back. Consider it as what I owe you for giving birth to you. Take this card, and we'll sever our mother-daughter relationship." Alice Smith struggled internally for a while, but she still raised her head, gritted her teeth, and took it. "Mom, don't worry, all right, from now on, I'm not your mother anymore. Take the child and go. I'll transfer the remaining money to your card. Then I'll write down the card number for you." "No need, I've already memorized your card number." My mother smiled bitterly, her hands trembling as she cleared the dishes. Alice Smith took the card and went back to the room to call the children. I suddenly received a call from Tom. "Fiona, I ran into a motorcycle robbery downstairs, and I won't be able to come up for a while," hearing him panting heavily on the other end. I quickly grabbed my clothes and went downstairs. As soon as I reached the ground floor, I saw a crowd gathered not far away. Tom was crouched in the crowd, panting heavily. When he saw me coming, he waved at me. I rushed over anxiously, looking him up and down. He patted my head. "I'm fine, don't worry. I just ran so hard my lungs feel like they're about to burst." I was finally relieved. The crowd was still buzzing with discussion, bold enough to snatch a phone in broad daylight. "I heard they've pulled off several crimes in this area. My neighbor's gold necklace was also stolen by them." "Everyone, hold on a moment, let's see how the police handle this pair of male and female thieves." Male and female thieves. Only then did I notice the man and woman wearing helmets who had been snatching things on the ground. They were being forcibly pinned to the ground by several people. At first glance, I almost stopped breathing. The man was wearing a leather jacket, with the limited edition watch Alice Smith had given him on his arm. Combined with his tall, slender figure and those peach blossom eyes, it was unmistakably Bruce, and the woman beside him left me even more astonished, although with red hair and a lip piercing, but the faintly visible mole on the tip of the nose is all too familiar. "Susan, when did these two become partners?" I suspect I might have misread it, but the next second, a pair of hands forcefully pushed me aside. "Bruce." I turned to the side, and Alice Smith was standing next to me with her nephew. Her face turned pale as she shakily removed the helmets from both of their heads. When she saw that it was indeed two people, she nearly lost her balance. Then she collapsed to the ground, wailing loudly. "I went to borrow money to pay off your debts, so how did you end up getting involved with this bitch? I've given so much for you, and this is how you treat me. Are you even human? And you despicable woman." Everyone was watching the commotion from the sidelines. A sharp-eyed auntie said Susan looked familiar and lived in the neighborhood next to ours. Susan, being talked about like this, bit her lip, her eyes darting around evasively. "You're the one who's cheap. I was with Brother Ben first. Do you think he loves you? I'm telling you, all these years, we've never really broken up. If it weren't for your family having a bit of money, Brother Ben would have stopped paying attention to you long ago." Song Miao trembled with anger from head to toe. Suddenly, I remembered something. Could it be that my mother saw Bruce that night? Was he here to see Susan off? Alice Smith pulled her nephew, who had run over to call for his father, causing him to stumble and fall to the ground, wailing loudly. Seeing the child was innocent, Tom felt a pang of heartache and picked him up. Alice Smith went mad, shaking Bruce. "Ben, tell me, all of this is fake. You divorced me because you didn't want to drag me down, not for that bitch. Tell me, and I'll give you this 200,000 yuan. The crowd all cursed her for being crazy. Bruce lowered his head. "You can curse me, but don't curse her. Your son is already so grown up." And you're still defending her. Alice Smith went completely mad, crying and laughing as she picked up a brick from the ground. He struck Susan right on the head. Susan's head tilted to the side as she passed out. A pool of blood spread on the ground. Bruce, who had remained silent all along, thought Susan had been beaten to death. He cried out like a madman, then he suddenly broke free from the two people pinning him down. He pulled a fruit knife from his pocket and lunged at Alice Smith. My sister lay motionless in a pool of blood. His eyes were bloodshot as he walked step by step toward his nephew. If it weren't for Tom blocking with his arm, that child would likely have lost his life. Fortunately, the police arrived in time and subdued Bruce. It turned out that after Susan transferred schools, she and Bruce had never actually broken up. Susan's mother wanted to find a wealthy family for Susan. She couldn't let go of Bruce, so the two of them started a honey trap scheme. They extorted money from that wealthy man, but the money was quickly spent. Bruce had no choice but to reconcile with Alice Smith. After having a child, he feared he wouldn't be able to extricate himself, so he picked fights to make Alice Smith miscarry. Unexpectedly, my parents turned the tables. The two of them thought it over carefully. They set their sights on Alice Smith. Seeing that Alice Smith was also about to be drained dry, the two of them started engaging in motorcycle snatch theft. Susan developed a hematoma in her brain, which damaged her central nervous system, causing her to lose the ability to speak. Although my sister was rescued in time, she became mentally unstable. On the other side, Bruce was sentenced to 20 years in prison for gambling, intentional injury, and robbery, with multiple charges combined. There are heartless children in the world, but no heartless parents. My parents may have spoken harshly, but they still took care of my little nephew and my crazy sister. Because my sister's engagement and wedding were rushed, my college celebration banquet was never held. My parents always felt they owed me, so they made up for it at the engagement banquet. It was just different from the previous life. At the engagement banquet, Tom and I became the center of attention in the room. Not only did the Song family produce a graduate student, but the boyfriend she found was also a master's degree holder. Everyone was filled with admiration. Once the dishes were served, everyone started eating, and the atmosphere was joyful and harmonious. Just as they were eating with great relish, the aunt smacked her lips and pointed her chopsticks at her sister to tease her. "Alice, your sister is about to get engaged. When do you plan to remarry?" Alice sat restlessly, shrinking her neck and giggling foolishly. "I'm not getting married anymore. I'm not getting married anymore. Only fools get married." Everyone complained that Auntie was just making conversation for the sake of it. My parents didn't look too pleased either. Seeing that my sister didn't seem to understand, Auntie pursed her lips. "That kid Bruce is really hateful, hurting the child like that. I heard he died in prison a few days ago." Alice was drinking her beverage when she heard the news and suddenly burst into laughter. "It's good that he's dead. It's good." Tears streamed from her eyes as she laughed. Everyone tried to comfort her with a few words, but she mumbled something unintelligible. Everyone knew she was foolish, so they paid her no mind and continued to steer the conversation back to me and Tom. Seeing that her words hadn't captured everyone's attention, my aunt muttered again, "If you ask me, if Alice hadn't gone to see Bruce off back then and just let him go abroad, things would have been so much better. It wouldn't have turned out like this now." Alice heard these words, and her foot that was kicking the table stopped moving. As if remembering something, she grabbed my hand. Under the dazzling lights, her eyes were filled with unease and panic. "Sis, that's right, on the day of the heavy rain, why didn't you stop me? And Mom, back when I was pregnant, why didn't you let me have an abortion? And Dad, why did you agree to let me marry someone like this?" She pointed at everyone at the table, shifting all the blame, whether related or not, onto others. My mother suddenly stood up and slammed the table. "Enough." Her lips trembled. "I used to blame Fiona for not stopping you, but later I realized, what good would stopping you do? Who could ever control what you want to do? Every choice was made by you. This outcome is also a result of your own actions. You have no right to blame your sister, and even less to hold anyone else accountable. The person you should be questioning the most is yourself." Alice Smith looked dazed, shaking her head and muttering, "It wasn't me, it wasn't me. Blame you for giving birth to me. He. Blame you for giving birth to me." Suddenly, she stopped smiling, her eyes turning fierce. No, it's all Bruce's fault. It's all Bruce who led me step by step into the abyss. I'm going to ask him right now, why can't he live his own life well, and why does he have to drag me down with him?" As she spoke, she stumbled out the door. We were just about to chase after her. A piercing screech of brakes was followed by a heavy thud. Alice Smith fell heavily to the ground. In that moment, the wail of an ambulance, the roar of traffic, and the cries of her parents all blended into a chaotic blur. "Alice, wake up, wake up." Tom held me tightly in his arms. Covering my eyes, the originally windy day began to rage. The door behind us was howling as it was blown by the wind. This wind, it's exactly the same as the day I died. Between the fingers, the trees in the distance are whipped back and forth by the wind. A wave of indescribable sorrow welled up in her heart. I know, Alice Smith, she will never wake up. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.